The coffee cup was already in midair when the entire courtroom realized what was about to happen. In exactly 30 seconds, Karen Brennan would go from arrogant defendant to handcuffed criminal, caught on camera committing one of the most shocking assaults in television history. But what Karen didn't know was that throwing that coffee wasn't just assault. It was assaulting a federal judge on live television, a crime that carries up to 20 years in federal prison. And the reason Karen threw that coffee? It would expose a secret so dark that 3 major networks initially refused to air the footage, fearing the backlash from what Judge Judy was about to reveal. This was supposed to be a simple case. A small claims dispute over a $400 dog grooming bill. Karen Brennan, a 42-year-old real estate agent, had walked into Judge Judy's courtroom that Tuesday morning with the kind of smug confidence that could only come from years of bulldozing people without consequence. She thought this would be easy, another chance to intimidate a small business owner with her loud voice and aggressive tactics. What Karen didn't know was that Judge Judy had already discovered her criminal background involving animal abuse. Judge Judy's research team had spent weeks uncovering police reports, restraining orders and video evidence that would destroy Karen's life completely. The manila folder sitting on Judge Judy's desk wasn't just about a grooming bill. It was about a pattern of violence that had been hidden for decades. What made Karen so enraged that she committed assault on live television in front of 12 million viewers? What was the secret evidence that Judge Judy discovered about Karen's past that was so damaging it would change everything? And why did this single moment of violence result in FBI involvement, federal charges, and Karen losing custody of her own children? This is the story of the day America's most arrogant Karen attacked America's toughest judge and discovered that assault in a federal courtroom is not a civil matter. It's a federal crime. What followed would be the fastest arrest in courtroom television history, captured frame by frame as Karen's entire life collapsed in less than 1 minute. But if you think you know how this ends, you're wrong. Because what Judge Judy revealed about Karen's past made the assault look like the least of her crimes. The darkness Judge Judy uncovered would shock the nation and prove that some people have been getting away with evil for far too long. Before we show you the exact moment Karen committed career suicide and assault on live television, smash that like button if you believe people who attack judges deserve maximum consequences. Hit subscribe because what you're about to witness will prove that violence is never the answer, and Judge Judy doesn't just deliver verdicts. She delivers justice. Trust me, the next 20 minutes will change how you think about entitled behavior forever. 2 weeks before the coffee cup went flying across Judge Judy's courtroom, Sarah Mitchell sat in her small dog grooming salon called Pampered Paws, staring at the most heartbreaking case of animal neglect she had seen in her 12 years of business. Sarah, a 34-year-old small business owner who had built her reputation on gentle care and genuine love for animals, had just finished grooming a purebred golden retriever named Princess. But this wasn't a normal grooming appointment. The dog had arrived at her salon in shocking condition, severely matted, visibly malnourished, with patches of fur missing and what looked like old injuries hidden beneath the tangled coat. Sarah always took before and after photos of her clients, a standard practice to showcase her work and protect herself from false complaints. But the photos she took of Princess that day weren't about showcasing her skills. They were evidence of something much darker. Sarah spent 4 painstaking hours carefully removing the mats without hurting Princess, discovering more evidence of possible abuse with every snip of her scissors. The dog flinched at sudden movements, cowered when Sarah raised her hand to pet her, and had overgrown nails that had curved into her paw pads, causing obvious pain with every step. When Karen Brennan arrived to pick up Princess, she didn't thank Sarah for the hours of careful work. She didn't show relief that her dog looked healthy and beautiful again. Instead, she exploded in rage, screaming that Sarah had ruined her dog's fur and refusing to pay the $400 bill. Sarah, shocked by the aggressive response and deeply concerned about Princess's welfare, made a decision that would change everything. She filed a small claims lawsuit, attaching every photograph she had taken, documenting the condition Princess had arrived in and the transformation after proper care. What Sarah didn't know was that Karen Brennan was a 42-year-old real estate agent with a reputation for explosive anger and entitled behavior that had made her notorious in her community. Karen had been involved in 6 previous small claims cases over the past 3 years, always as the defendant, always refusing to pay for services she had agreed to, always using aggression and intimidation to avoid consequences. Her neighbors had filed noise complaints 14 times in just 2 years, documenting screaming matches, loud music at 3 a.m., and disturbing sounds that suggested violence inside her home. But what nobody in Karen's community knew, what had been carefully hidden behind sealed court records and juvenile privacy laws, was that Karen had a dark history involving animal cruelty dating back to her teenage years. She viewed her upcoming appearance on Judge Judy as easy TV time, a chance to humiliate a small business owner on national television and avoid paying a bill she had always planned to skip. While Karen was bragging to her friends about how she would destroy this nobody groomer on TV, Judge Judy's research team was conducting the kind of deep background investigation that had made Judge Judy's show legendary for exposing liars and abusers. They had uncovered Karen's sealed juvenile records through proper legal channels, discovering a disturbing incident at age 16 involving deliberate harm to a neighbor's cat. They found police reports filed by Karen's ex-husband during their divorce proceedings, detailing incidents of domestic violence, property destruction, and terrifying outbursts of rage that had left him fearing for his safety. The research team discovered 3 separate incidents over the past 5 years where animal control had been called to Karen's residence, each report documenting concerns about neglected dogs, inadequate shelter, and suspicious injuries that Karen explained away with lies that grew more elaborate with each investigation. Most damning of all, they found Karen's own social media posts where she had publicly bragged about her harsh methods of disciplining her dogs, using language that made experienced animal welfare investigators sick to their stomachs. Judge Judy hadn't just prepared to rule on a simple dog grooming bill. She had prepared to expose a pattern of abuse, violence, and cruelty that had been allowed to continue for far too long. The thick manila folder sitting prominently on her desk that Tuesday morning contained evidence that would destroy Karen's carefully constructed facade and reveal the monster hiding behind the designer clothes and fake smile. Judge Judy knew that even before Karen threw that coffee cup, even before the assault that would send her to federal prison, the evidence in that folder was enough to send Karen to jail and ensure she would never be allowed near another animal again. What Judge Judy didn't know was that Karen's rage, when confronted with the truth about her abuse, would explode into violence that would make legal history and ensure that justice would be served faster and more completely than anyone could have imagined. Karen Brennan strutted into Judge Judy's courtroom that Tuesday morning like she was walking a fashion runway, her designer Chanel suit perfectly tailored, her $2,000 Louis Vuitton handbag swinging from her arm with deliberate confidence. She had spent the previous evening telling her friends exactly how she planned to destroy this nobody groomer on national television, practicing her dismissive eye rolls and condescending tone in front of her bathroom mirror. Across the courtroom, Sarah Mitchell entered quietly, clutching her folder of photographs against her chest like a shield, visibly nervous as she took her place at the plaintiff's table. The contrast between them couldn't have been more stark. Karen radiated arrogance and entitlement. Sarah embodied quiet dignity and genuine concern. Judge Judy's opening words cut through the courtroom tension like a surgical blade. Ms. Brennan, before we discuss your dog's grooming, I want to establish something very clearly. This court has obtained some concerning information about your treatment of animals. For just 1 second, Karen's confident mask slipped and pure panic flashed across her face. But she recovered quickly with false bravado, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I don't know what you're talking about, Your Honor. I love my dog. This is obviously some kind of misunderstanding. Sarah's testimony began with trembling hands as she presented her evidence, laying out the before and after photographs of Princess on the table where cameras could capture every devastating detail. The before photos showed a dog that looked more like an abandoned stray than a beloved family pet. Severely matted fur, overgrown nails that had curved painfully into her paw pads, visible ribs showing through her coat, and patches of missing fur that revealed what Sarah had discovered during grooming. Her voice cracked with emotion as she described finding what looked like old burn marks on Princess's skin, hidden beneath layers of neglected fur. I almost called animal control immediately, Sarah explained, wiping tears from her eyes. But I decided to give Ms. Brennan the benefit of the doubt. I thought maybe she had been sick or going through something difficult. I wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation. Karen's reaction to Sarah's emotional testimony was immediate and telling. She rolled her eyes so dramatically that the cameras captured every second of her contempt, sighed loudly with exaggerated annoyance, and muttered just loud enough for the microphones to pick up, "This is absolutely ridiculous. What a performance." Judge Judy watched Karen's body language with the laser focus of a predator studying prey, noting every dismissive gesture, every expression of contempt, every signal that this woman felt zero remorse for the suffering she had caused. Judge Judy's voice became sharp and direct as she began her questioning. "Ms. Brennan, when was the last time you took Princess to a veterinarian for a checkup?" Karen's dismissive answer dripped with annoyance. "I don't see how that's relevant to a grooming bill, Your Honor." The courtroom went quiet as Judge Judy leaned forward. Answer the question, Ms. Brennan. Karen waved her hand dismissively. I don't know, maybe a year ago? She's fine. She doesn't need constant vet visits. That's just a way for vets to steal money from people. Judge Judy reached into her manila folder and pulled out the first document, holding it up for the cameras. According to Princess's veterinary records, which I've subpoenaed through proper legal channels, your dog hasn't seen a veterinarian in 3 years. Not 1 year. 3 years. Karen's face flushed red with sudden anger. You can't do that. Those records are private. This is an invasion of privacy. Judge Judy's response was ice cold. I can do whatever I need to do to determine the truth in my courtroom, Ms. Brennan. And right now, the truth is looking very ugly for you. The trap was closing and Karen could feel it. Judge Judy's voice dropped to that dangerously quiet tone that regular viewers knew meant someone was about to be destroyed. Ms. Brennan, I'm going to ask you a direct question and I want a yes or no answer. Have you ever been investigated for animal abuse? Karen exploded out of her chair. This is outrageous. I came here about a stupid grooming bill, not to be attacked by some TV judge on a witch hunt. Judge Judy's voice cut through Karen's tantrum like a knife. Sit down and answer the question. Yes or no? Karen remained standing, her hands gripping the table. No. Absolutely not. This is slander. Judge Judy opened the manila folder slowly, deliberately, her eyes never leaving Karen's face. That's very interesting, Ms. Brennan, because I have documentation right here that tells a very different story. Karen's face transformed in an instant, the angry red flush draining away to leave her white with fear. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. The entire courtroom fell into absolute silence as everyone realized they were witnessing the moment before everything exploded. Judge Judy's voice filled the courtroom with devastating precision as she began reading from the documents in her manila folder. I have here police reports from 2018, 2019, and 2021, all involving complaints about your treatment of animals, Ms. Brennan. She continued without looking up, her tone cold and factual. Multiple neighbors reported hearing a dog crying for extended periods, sometimes lasting hours into the night. Animal control visited your residence twice and issued formal warnings about inadequate shelter during extreme weather conditions. And most disturbing of all, your ex-husband's restraining order specifically mentions witnessing you disciplining your previous dog by. Karen's scream cut through the courtroom like a siren. Stop. You have no right to read that. This is my private life. Judge Judy looked up slowly, her eyes boring into Karen with intensity that made the temperature in the room seem to drop. I have every right, Ms. Brennan. This is my courtroom, and this evidence is now part of the public record. Karen shot to her feet, her entire body trembling with rage that had been building since the moment Judge Judy opened that folder. You're a liar. You're making this up to humiliate me on television. None of this is real. Judge Judy's voice remained unnaturally calm, which only seemed to enrage Karen further. Sit down, Ms. Brennan. Now. Karen's response was explosive. No. I won't sit here and be humiliated by some TV judge who thinks she's God. You're not a real judge. This isn't a real court. The bailiff took a cautious step forward, his hand moving instinctively toward his equipment. Judge Judy's final warning was delivered in that deadly quiet tone that had preceded the destruction of countless liars before Karen. This is your last warning, Ms. Brennan. Sit down immediately, or you will be removed from this courtroom. Instead of sitting, Karen's hand shot out and grabbed the paper coffee cup that had been sitting on the table in front of her. Time seemed to slow down as her fingers wrapped around it. The audience collectively gasped, some people rising halfway out of their seats as they realized what was about to happen. Sarah's eyes widened in absolute horror, her hand flying to her mouth. The bailiff broke into a run, but he was too far away. Karen's arm swung forward with all the force of her pent-up rage, and the coffee cup flew through the air in a perfect arc, tumbling end over end as 12 million viewers watched in stunned disbelief. The cup hit Judge Judy's shoulder with a dull thud, and hot coffee exploded across her black robe, splashing up onto her neck and dripping down her sleeve onto the bench. The courtroom erupted in screams and gasps of shock. But Judge Judy didn't move. She sat perfectly still, coffee dripping from her sleeve, her expression transformed into something that went beyond anger into a realm of pure, controlled fury. Her eyes remained locked on Karen, who stood frozen, her outstretched arms still extended from the throw. Karen's face transformed in an instant from rage to the dawning horror of someone who had just made the worst mistake of their entire life. Her lips formed the words in a whisper that the microphones barely caught. Oh my God, what did I just do? The bailiff reached her in 3 strides. Judge Judy's voice, when it finally came, was so quiet that the entire courtroom had to strain to hear it, which made it infinitely more terrifying than if she had shouted, "Bailiff, arrest her. Now." Karen's survival instincts finally kicked in and she tried to run, stumbling backward toward the exit, but 2 bailiffs had already moved to block the doors. "Wait. Please wait. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It was an accident." The metallic click of handcuffs locking into place echoed through the silent courtroom exactly 30 seconds after the coffee had left Karen's hand. She was sobbing hysterically now, her designer suit rumpled, her makeup running in dark streams down her face. "Please, Your Honor." The cup slipped. "It was an accident. I would never." Judge Judy stood slowly, the coffee-stained robe making her look like a warrior who had just survived a battle. "Ms. Brennan, you just assaulted a federal judge on camera, in front of 12 million witnesses. This is no longer a civil case about a grooming bill. This is now a federal criminal matter, and you are under arrest." Karen's knees buckled and she would have collapsed to the floor if the bailiffs hadn't been holding her upright. The cameras captured every second of her complete breakdown as she was led away in handcuffs, still sobbing and begging for mercy that would never come. Judge Judy stood behind her bench, coffee still dripping from her robe, and addressed the camera with the kind of controlled fury that would be replayed millions of times across every social media platform in existence. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you just witnessed was not a momentary loss of control. What you witnessed was assault on a federal officer, a crime that carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in federal prison." Karen, still handcuffed and held firmly by 2 bailiffs, was crying so hard she could barely breathe. "Please, Your Honor. I have children. I made a terrible mistake. Please don't do this." Judge Judy's expression showed no mercy. "You should have thought about your children before you committed a federal crime on live television, Ms. Brennan. But before you're taken into custody, I want this courtroom and every person watching at home to understand exactly who you are and what you've been doing to innocent animals for years." She returned to the manila folder and began reading the complete record of Karen's history of abuse. Sealed juvenile record from age 16 involving deliberate animal cruelty to a neighbor's cat that required veterinary surgery. Police report from 2018 filed by your ex-husband during divorce proceedings, citing multiple incidents of domestic violence and specifically documenting that he witnessed you kick your previous dog so hard it required emergency veterinary care. Animal control report from 2019 documenting a malnourished German Shepherd removed from your custody after neighbors reported the dog had been left outside in freezing temperatures without adequate shelter for 3 consecutive days. Sarah was crying openly now, vindicated but heartbroken by the confirmation of everything she had suspected about Princess's treatment. The audience sat in shocked silence as Judge Judy continued. Report from 2021 where 3 separate neighbors called police after hearing a dog screaming in pain inside your residence. And just 6 weeks ago, multiple photographs taken by concerned neighbors showing Princess looking severely neglected, underweight and in obvious distress. Karen had stopped protesting and now sat slumped in her chair, her head hanging down as the full weight of her exposed history crushed her. Judge Judy's voice grew even colder. "Ms. Brennan, I find in favor of the plaintiff, Sarah Mitchell, for the full amount of $400 plus court costs. But that judgment is now the least of your concerns. You will be charged with assault on a federal officer. I am also ordering that all evidence presented here today, including the video footage of your assault, be forwarded immediately to Animal Control and Child Protective Services." Karen's head snapped up, fresh terror flooding her face. "No. Not my children. Please, you can't." Judge Judy's final words were delivered with absolute finality. "Your pattern of violence and abuse ends today, Ms. Brennan. Bailiff, remove her from my courtroom." The cameras captured every moment as Karen was dragged away, still screaming and begging, her cries echoing down the hallway long after she disappeared from view. If you can't believe Karen just assaulted Judge Judy on live television and got arrested within 30 seconds, smash that subscribe button right now because the consequences get even more devastating. Comment "Justice served" if you think Karen got exactly what she deserved for her violence and years of animal abuse. Hit that like button to support small business owners like Sarah who have the courage to expose abusers even when it's terrifying. The next few minutes will show you that this assault was just the beginning of Karen's complete destruction, and what happened to her children will shock you even more. Within 2 hours of her arrest, Karen Brennan was formally charged with assault on a federal officer, a felony carrying up to 20 years in prison. Federal prosecutors added additional charges of contempt of court and disorderly conduct. Her bail was set at $50,000, an amount Karen couldn't afford, forcing her to spend 3 days in county jail before her family scraped together enough money to post bond. But her legal nightmare was just beginning. The footage of her assault went viral within minutes of the show airing, exploding across every social media platform with over 200 million views in the first 48 hours alone. The hashtag #CoffeeKaren trended worldwide for 6 consecutive days. 6 months after throwing that coffee cup, Karen Brennan stood in federal court and pled guilty to assault on a federal officer, accepting a plea deal to avoid a trial that would have exposed even more of her dark history. She was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison followed by 3 years of supervised probation. But the prison sentence was only the beginning of her total life destruction. Additional animal cruelty charges were filed based on the evidence Judge Judy had presented, resulting in a lifetime ban from owning any pets. Child Protective Services launched a full investigation into Karen's fitness as a parent, and her ex-husband was granted emergency full custody of their 2 children. Karen was restricted to supervised visitation only, 2 hours per week, after a court-appointed psychologist determined her violent outbursts posed a risk to the children's safety and emotional well-being. Meanwhile, Sarah Mitchell's life took a dramatically different turn. She received her $400 judgment plus additional damages, but more importantly, she was contacted by the animal rescue organization that had taken custody of Princess. Sarah immediately applied to adopt the dog she had fought so hard to protect, and Princess became not just her beloved pet but the mascot of her thriving business. Pampered Paws saw a 400% increase in clients after the episode aired, with customers traveling from neighboring states specifically to support the groomer who had stood up for an abused animal. Sarah used her newfound platform to become an advocate for animal welfare, starting a nonprofit called Princess's Voice that helps rescue dogs find loving homes and educates pet owners about recognizing signs of abuse. Judge Judy's handling of the assault became a defining moment in her legendary career. The episode became the most watched in the show's history, and Judge Judy received commendations from law enforcement organizations and judicial associations nationwide for her calm, professional response to being attacked. The coffee-stained robe was preserved as evidence for the federal trial and later donated to the Smithsonian as a piece of television and legal history. In interviews following the incident, Judge Judy stated simply, "Violence is never acceptable, especially in a courtroom. Ms. Brennan learned that my courtroom is not a place for tantrums, and assault has serious, life-altering consequences." Karen's story became a cautionary tale shared across the internet, a perfect example of how 30 seconds of uncontrolled rage can destroy everything you have. She lost her freedom, her children, her career, and her reputation, all because she couldn't control her temper when confronted with the truth about her years of abuse and cruelty. If this story of instant justice and complete destruction restored your faith that violent behavior has real consequences, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another moment when entitled bullies face the full force of the law. Share this video with someone who needs to see what happens when you assault a judge on live television in front of 12 million witnesses. Comment below and tell us, should Karen have received even more prison time for her years of animal abuse and her attack on Judge Judy? And most importantly, if you support small business owners like Sarah who have the courage to stand up against abusers even when it's scary, drop a like on this video right now. Remember, violence is never the answer, but handcuffs are always the consequence. Thanks for watching, and never forget that in Judge Judy's courtroom, respect isn't optional, and neither is going to federal prison when you throw coffee at a judge. Justice was served, and it only took 30 seconds.